Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Pitch Us. Great guest today, Gavin joining us, and a really amazing entrepreneur, Tyler. I'm always joined with my co-founder, Jeff Erickson. I am the author of the Pitch Deck book and the former executive director for Park City Angels. Jeff, why don't you do an introduction?
Yes, Jeff Erickson. I'm with a company called Forecaster. We make financial modeling easy for founders. I'm excited today to hear about Tyler, and I'm also thrilled that Gavin would join us as our celebrity guest judge here. So, Gavin, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hey all, my name is Gavin Gilfand. I'm a sophomore at the University of Texas at Austin and recently co-founded the Founders Trust Network to help source angel capital for early stage pre-seed and seed startups. So excited to be here and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, excited to be a part of this, Gavin. And I've been impressed in meeting with you, and the number of companies that you have brought through diligence is really impressive as a college student. So good job.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Awesome. And then Tyler, thanks for being here. Go ahead and share your screen and then pitch us.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Tyler McGee. I'm the founder of Shepherd Farming and grew up on a family farm up in northeast Montana, 2 miles south of the Canadian border. And then through college, undergrad at the University of Montana, and then later grad school at Texas A&M, spent all of my time really focused on solving problems in agriculture using technology. That's been my whole background, all my research areas and my focus. And then went to work for Syngenta for a number of years as their lead research architect on a lot of the digital innovations that we were pushing through on the research side. And Shepherd is really fascinating because Shepherd actually came out of one of those challenges that we ran into often. And this was something that was so fascinating in my role as an architect, is really spending time working on farms, understanding their processes and where things were getting held back. And one of them that we ran into repeatedly is on the people side of agriculture. So we spend so much time and so many resources on the equipment, on the seeds, on the chemical, everything we can possibly do to boost yield in agriculture. That's the core of the game, is how can we possibly make this field produce more than last year and hopefully more than our neighbor. And what I realized in watching a lot of farms work and even going back to my own family farm is that a lot of the yield loss that we see, a lot of that real lack of efficiency is actually driven on the people side. And it's because farm management does not have good tools and processes in place that allow them to really take advantage of the workforce that they have. This is actually why we have a perpetual labor shortage in our industry. And a lot of this boils down to inefficiency of the workforce. That's not any knock against the workers. It's actually against the processes that the workers use. There's a lot of slack that builds up throughout the day because every single stage of work that they do is followed by waiting to be told what to do next. Next is everything in agriculture is paper driven. Everything goes through these outdated methods. And what this means is that none of it is driven by data. You can't see any trends or do any analysis to understand where the operation actually needs to be running as successfully and smoothly as possible. And we work with a really large operation based in the Mid-South Delta region, Tennessee, Arkansas, and Mississippi. Their owner, wonderful, wonderful farmer, came to me on a number of occasions and has told me several times that if he could just get up to the minute information, he has no doubt that he could make better decisions that would make their operation more profitable. And so when we looked at this is a really interesting challenge because it's something that sounds like something that's ag specific. It sounds like a challenge that is specific to the farming sector. But as we dug into it, our team realized that it's actually not. It's a challenge that a lot of other industries have already faced and solved. And they've done it using what's called a task management platform. What's really interesting about this approach is that it's been used in e-commerce, it's used in the restaurant industry, it's used in fast food, it's used in a lot of sectors where you have a high turnover, low skill labor environment. And that's exactly what agriculture has. But what's really nice for this specific application is that it means we also pay attention to the tasks as they go throughout their life cycle, and we automatically build the farm's records as we go. So there's no coming in at the end of the day to do data management and data entry to build these records. That happens automatically simply because we're watching the tasks as they go throughout their lifespan. And then lastly, we've got some really cool and powerful future expansion opportunities simply because of the model that we've built, because it's task-centric as opposed to a hierarchical spreadsheet type approach that a lot of our competitors have taken. So in a nutshell, the way that Shepherd works is it's a platform and an application that sits on the mobile phone, and then we've also got a desktop environment that works through the web browser. Farm managers create and send tasks to their workers. It takes about 15 seconds to create a new task, And those tasks are sent right to the workers' phones. It actually shows up as a push notification. Workers receive that task, they mark it as accepted, and then later as completed when the work is done. And then those completed tasks are automatically archived into the farm's records, and we bring them back into a dashboard view that shows farm management exactly what's happening on their farm in real time, sort of like NASA mission control for the farm. And it's really powerful because it allows the farm management team to really get into that specific and strategic niche that they're supposed to be in about farm management rather than putting fires out all day, which is something they really appreciate. When I mentioned that we're built for the future, so this is something that we've really dived into in the last year or two, and we're starting by building that platform base around intelligent farm task management, giving farmers and farm managers the best tools to manage their operations to really boost the operating efficiency of their labor teams. But when we were talking to farmers, one thing that really came out loud and clear is a number of them said, hey, if you have all this information about what we're doing on our farm live, and you have all this information about what we're using up as those tasks are completed, why can't we link that to our retailers and allow them to understand what we need and when we need it so they can ship it to us as it happens? And this is something that we've talked to a number of retailers about, and even farm equipment and input providers about. It's something that they're very keen to do, but they don't have the data from the farm in that live fashion to be able to understand exactly when just in time is actually just in time. And that's something that Shepherd is really unique about, is we know exactly what's occurring, and we can tell those retailers when they're connected to by their farmers to say, the farm just sprayed 7 fields, or they've got 12 fields coming up next week that they're going to be spraying. This is what you need to be pre-positioning in your warehouses, and this is what you need to be bringing to the farm's doorstep tomorrow night to make sure that they have it and that they're ready to go, and that they never have to worry about running out of key inputs again. Another one that we're really excited about is actually working with the ag lending and banking sector. So we were working at a expo, we were talking to a number of growers, and my co-founder got approached by 2 men in suits. And they said, son, do you know who we are? And he said, no, I don't. And he said, do you know Ocean Spray Cranberries? And he said, yeah, I do. He said, we're their bank. So it turned out it was Farm Credit Services of America. And they said, we've been watching you very carefully for a number of months now. And you have this incredible amount of information coming off of the farm about how the farm is performing, what that risk profile looks like, things that to us are a black box when it comes to the farm getting their operating line of credit for each year. They said, when the farm wants to buy new equipment or buy more land, that's easy for us. That's real estate, that's depreciation. We're really good at that. But when it comes to that operating line of capital that they take out, in a lot of cases, $1 million plus loan, it's sort of a black box, and we really don't have good information on that, but you do, and you can help us understand those farm customers, understand what that risk profile looks like, and understand how we serve them better than we do today. So real quickly, going through the team, in addition to myself, we've got my co-founder who was approached by the 2 men in suits, comes from actually a background outside of agriculture, but in project management and pharmaceutical development. So really good at managing multi-million-dollar projects, making sure that things are getting done, making sure that operations are running smoothly. And he's critical to all of our back office operations being successful and smooth so that I can be out front talking with growers. We also have Alex, who I worked with for a number of years at Syngenta, truly one of the sharpest data engineers that I've ever worked with in my life. And before that, he was working at Red Hat. But what makes Alex so special is that, as he loves to tell it, he has over 400 years of family farming experience in his family history. And he ought to know, because genealogy is one of his hobbies. And what's important about that is it means that he understands agriculture. He can build the data models and has built our data model around the needs of how farms actually operate and how the industry works. And for a lot of data engineering in agriculture, that's simply not something that's possible. We also have Subhash, who's leading up our mobile development contract team, and his experiences with Facebook and Meta. So a really rock star team that knows how to build this and can get this done. Right now, we're currently raising a $750K seed round that's geared really mostly on building out those strategic partnerships with ag, retail, and banking sectors. We've got a number of conversations that are in place. They're very excited and keen about what we're building, but we're using that most critically as our channel for go-to-market. Agriculture and ag tech is a very interesting sector because it's so widely spread out, and the time to do deals is so long because of the way that our season works, that you have to have a channel to reach through the farmers in an existing way. And that's why we're building that out with ag, retail, and banking, but building it in a virtuous cycle so that we have a way that encourages adoption because they're getting value out of it, and they're the ones that are using it at an enterprise scale, but it allows us to get more data into the platform, build our models even stronger, and then further do business development with even more members of both of those sectors. And I really like to land here because this is so important for what we're doing in ag tech. For a lot of companies in the ag tech sphere, they really have to find a way to find a vertical fit inside that big ag pillar, the first one. Find a way to make themselves appealing to John Deere or Case or Corteva or Bayer, somebody who understands them and can acquire them. But what makes Shepherd special is that we've got these two on the right, digital work and ag tangential. And these are something that are not an option for most people in the ag tech space, but they work really well for what Shepherd is. I once had an investor ask, describe to me what Shepherd is in a sentence. And I said, Shepherd is Microsoft Teams for people who work outside. And he said, I understand exactly what this is. So Shepherd is building that digital work platform that allows teams to be more effective and more efficient through better communication, the same way that Monday and Google and Atlassian are building tools to help office workers. We do that for people who work outside. We're starting with agriculture because that's what's in our blood and in our background, but this works equally well in construction and in lawn care and in the trades and anywhere where you have people moving and coming and going all throughout the day, and you need really solid records to back up what's happened. And lastly, ag tangential, which is anyone who has an agriculture customer. These are members of the ag banking, the ag retail, the ag insurance space, people who want to use data and digital technologies to better understand their customer and serve them. And this is something that's very appealing. We've had even several banks that have told us we do not have the skill set and the capability to build something like this internally. So if we want to build this, it's going to have to be through something like you. And that's exactly true. That's a very valid justification. And that's what makes Shepherd so special, is that we have a really, really powerful solution to a problem that is the number one complaint about farmers throughout the United States and even internationally. But we're doing it in a way that's proven, yet new to the industry, and is actually fundamentally able to solve this at scale. And that's really what we're doing with Shepherd. It's all about applying intelligence to how farms work to enable them to work better. So with that, I open it up to any questions. I'd love to hear them.
Awesome, Tyler. Thank you so much.
Great job, Tyler.
Thank you.
All right.
Well done.
So, Gavin, you don't know this, but the way we operate is guests go first. So please tell us things that you really enjoyed about Tyler's presentation. And you can also throw in things like, I like this, but if that makes sense. So just what did you like?
Up front.
Yeah, so I thought Tyler was a very good storyteller. I was able to, follow along with the mission throughout the whole thing. And specifically, I really loved the way you kind of closed out the pitch with the last couple slides. I think the experience of Alex and yourself are, really credible. And obviously you have a lot of experience in the industry. And although you touched on that a little bit with your background at the beginning, I was thinking that potentially moving kind of that team slide up a little bit could potentially give yourself even some more credibility with, all the experience that you guys do have, and really put yourself out there in a strong position. And then I think my favorite part of the entire pitch was your line about the Microsoft Teams for, outside. I think that really provides great clarification to a lot of individuals about really what you guys are building.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Great points. I'll go next and just build on some of what Gavin was saying. The team, the way you set up your team, I thought was fantastic. You did a great job, building each individual member up and creating credibility and confidence in what you're doing by kind of diving into that. So great job there. The other thing I thought was very well done was setting the stage from the very beginning. You explained why you're doing this, your background. We got to know a little bit about, you and what's driving you, and then you spent a fair amount of time on the problem. It's like, here's what the problem is, defining it, going through all of that. And so it made it so the solution was pretty simple and easy to kind of go through. So again, great job. There was a lot to like about your presentation. One of the better ones I think I've seen come through. So like Gavin said, you're a great storyteller. You're a great presenter. Way to go. Excellent job. The other thing that I thought was really good is how you started to branch out into other opportunities, and without making it feel like, it was scattered, like, oh, and then we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and not having something that you're focused on. I didn't get that feeling at all. I felt like we're focused, but here are the ancillary opportunities that as an investor, you just start going, oh yeah, this is cool. So, and Gavin mentioned as well the statement about, we are Microsoft for Teams for people outdoors, and then even branching out and saying, this is the first segment that we're going to go into, that it can apply to construction, lawn care, whatever else. So a lot to like about your presentation and pitch. You've obviously practiced and you've gone through this quite a few times. So excellent job all the way around.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's not much I can add to this, but you did a really, really great job. I mean, I think there's some things we can help on, but obviously the intro was dialed. I love that type of intro. I love getting to know the entrepreneur. Like Gavin mentioned, it may be beneficial to talk about the team a little bit more from the beginning, but I don't know if you needed it because you did a great job with bringing them back up later. But it could work both ways. I just thought you did a great job. You clearly know the space. That's for real. Like I think I got that understanding. I'm not going to reiterate, but you just did a great, for what you had. I was very impressed. I really liked listening to it, and I think I could listen to you talk all day. So, let's go to, some of the areas of improvement, that we might've seen. So Gavin, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, so kind of obviously at the beginning it was a lot of storytelling about what the problem is, and then it dove into the solution. Something that I think could be an effective way to just grab more people's attention is if you can bring in some sort of statistic or data to talk a little bit more about the size of the market, as well as diving more into how the business will make money, and talk about different revenue streams and things of that nature. I felt like I might have been a little uncertain there, but
Yeah.
I also really did enjoy the storytelling nature and the conversational tone of it. So just finding that balance between not being too analytical but also including some of that.
Yep. No, I appreciate it.
Gavin, great points. You're like a pro at this, gotta say. So kudos. Those were the points that I had as well. I mean, I'll tag on to what Gavin was saying, but I think you were missing the revenue model and these are critical points. But your revenue model, the size of the opportunity, and that kind of ties into your revenue model. What are we kind of looking at in terms of the potential here? And so the market size, I mean, normally, I don't put a ton of weight into a market size, but here I did have some questions on, okay, how big is it? Is this a venture-based deal? Is this an angel deal with a potential exit in a few years to one of these companies? I wasn't sure on any of that. And so I think hitting on those points through both a quick review of the market size and potential and what you're thinking it could be, combined with a good idea of what your revenue model looks like. How are you making money?
Yep.
What does the potential revenue look like in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years?
Yeah.
And then finally, kind of the competition. I was curious. I mean, one of the thoughts that did come into my mind was, okay, you've identified the problem, and I really liked how you said, this problem is being addressed in this sector, and this sector, but not in the agriculture sector.
Yep.
But at the same time, while I like that and it helped me understand, I was also wondering, so why wouldn't Asana or somebody else go after this? Is the market too small for them that they're like, we'll get there?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's actually, so ag is a very unique niche, and there are a lot of farmers that have tried to use Trello as a great example, where they try to use Trello to fit that need, and it never works because you have to have consideration in the architecture, like what do you do when there's no network? Because a lot of these fields have really poor network coverage. So what we do is we cache changes locally until we hit a network again. Things like that, understanding the workflow and the data points that feed into a task. And so we've had a number of farmers that have tried other things in the past, and they really don't work, which is why a lot of them end up on paper and Excel. But actually, as far as competitors go, one of the best ones out there is actually John Deere Operations Center, which does a half-hearted attempt at doing this, but it's really meant in a way to upsell more equipment.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
Great. Well, I'll leave you with one last question that I had was when you got into the mobile phones and the workers, the agriculture workers using the phones out in the fields, one of the thoughts I had was connection. So it sounds like you're uniquely addressing that. The other was the language barrier, where um, as a kid, I'd work on the farm. Sometimes I was with a lot of Hispanic workers who didn't speak English.
Yep.
I'm guessing that that's still similar.
Yep.
And is there a language barrier? Is there an issue with them using phones and technology? So just a thought I had
Yep.
that I would have probably asked you in terms of the follow up.
It's another good question. So we've had all farm workers have smartphones now. I always joke with people when they ask us, they go into a Best Buy or the cell phone store, you cannot find a flip phone anymore. That's just the standard phone is an Android or an iPhone. And what we do for the language barrier is that we actually have Shepherd in bilingual mode. So it will handle English or Spanish based on the device's settings. We don't even ask you what language preference it is. If you have a Spanish phone set in settings, it will show the interface in Spanish. We haven't gone so far as to do automatic translation of things like comments yet, but it's actually fairly trivial to do that too. And so you can have an English speaking manager send a task to a Spanish speaking worker and have them understand what you're asking them to do.
Interesting. Right there. That's a benefit right in and of itself. Right there.
And that's, I always say, as part of, one, it's the nice thing to do, but it's actually a health and safety issue too, because in a lot of these cases, you're asking somebody to be either operating machinery or using chemicals, and you need them to understand what you're asking them to do and how to do it properly.
Interesting.
Yep.
Hey, again, great job, Tyler.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm going to echo with what everybody said, and then I'll add a few things. I think one of the things that I would have liked to see is the revenue model for sure.
Yep.
It helps us understand what's happening. One element that was missing within that is traction. Who's using it, who's baiting it, or who's got some LOIs. I love the story of all these people approaching you. But like, why hasn't Ocean Spray just given you $1 million to go out and try it, right?
Yeah.
Because that would be dope. So that's something that obviously, you can add. That would be a great one. As far as something I think that could really, really help in the problem, the problem very, very well, and we're just listening. I think if you could break up that one slide into a couple slides, then like with what Gavin said is you can show us some data. You don't even have to talk about it. You can just show us what's actually happening. Give us some visual cues about like that one element of the problem. For example, like you just mentioned, connectivity. That's a real issue, right? You could show like, here's the hot spots on a white. You don't have to talk about it. And you're like, I'll show you how we solve it later, right? So that would be a really, really clean way of doing that. So traction. I also don't know what you're going to do with the money. So like what are the milestones that you're trying to accomplish? How are you planning to allocate the capital? So I would add that to it. With that, I would also, so you said that you're raising $750K for 2 years of runway.
Yep.
So as an investor, that's not enough money in my brain, right? 750, maybe 18 months at the most. But just kind of sometimes that's like, you're not raising enough. It can bring up that question. And obviously I'm assuming, you ran your numbers, but in our case, we're like, man, maybe this is the first tranche. Like, why aren't you raising $1.5 million? Those kinds of things. So just it's a subtle detail, but it does bring up questions. So make sure that your runway matches the ask. And one of the rules of thumb that I like is if you're hiring 7 people, and this is real quick mathematics, use Forecaster to do a better job. But about $100K per person per year.
Yeah.
So you would say, we're hiring 7 people. They're going to do these 5 roles or whatever the thing's going to be. And then another thing that I would add, I love the way that you talked about your team. Especially, I don't know how old you are, but being younger as an entrepreneur really requires what I'm called gray hairs. People who have been in the industry, have an advisory board. You don't have to discuss them, but like when you bring in people who have, I mean, you guys have tons of experience already, but people who have sold into the industry, that kind of thing that would just round out that team would be very, very helpful for us. And like I said, you don't have to talk about them. This is more educating other people, but it does add a ton of value to the team.
I used to put them up on the slide, how the advisory board is set up. And I had an investor point out when I sent it to him, he's like, oh, you actually have farmers on your advisory board. That's so important because a lot of these companies don't even have their customer on their advisory board. So they have no idea what they're even aiming for. But we have a mix of people who've led prior rounds with us, advisors, accelerator leads that we've been involved in, and farmers. So,
yeah.
Interesting.
That's great.
One other point, I mean, you just brought up that you guys went through an accelerator, that you had previous investors. All of that stuff is relevant.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to know a little bit more about that probably.
For sure. Yep.
And then my final suggestion, and this is a Tim Cooley thing, and Jeff knows that I love this, but end with your ask. You did a great job transitioning, and I think that that's fine. But for me personally and for you, if you end with your ask and you wrap in those milestones that you're going to hit, remind us what the company does, and then what the capital is used for, and you leave that slide, we naturally go into Q&A. So you don't need that question slide. You can put your contact information. You can do all that thing in one slide, and it's really, really clean. And plus, like Gavin will probably tell you, that slide gets the most airtime. And so typically it could be behind you for 15 minutes of Q&A. And it's just constantly reminding the investors of what you're doing, why you're there, what you're asking for. And that's a good thing. Whereas a thank you slide actually kills that conversation. So that's my personal push. I'd love to see no more thank you slides in pitch decks. I just don't think they're necessary. But other than that,
one other recommendation I had was, this is kind of a personal preference, but I always think it's important, like, to talk a little bit about outside of capital from any investor. What does your ideal investor look like? What are they going to bring to the table, and where could you use the most help? So that'll just get investors' minds going in the back of their head, thinking, who do I know, or who can I potentially introduce this founder to? Where at that point, even if it doesn't end up being a fit for capital, if you put that out there and they know, maybe they can introduce you to someone else a little bit easier.
For sure, yeah.
It's a good thought.
That is a great one. Good. Any other feedback for Tyler? Awesome. So it comes down to the question, based off of what we heard today. Before I get to this, there is one more thing. You are in the ag space. We've seen lots of ag companies, and we know the sales cycles are really, really slow, right? Yep. So that's an issue you need to address throughout this, and how you're going to try and overcome that. That's a really big one. So with that being said, based off of what we heard today, Gavin, would you move this company onto due diligence?
I would not, but solely because I was still confused about, the revenue model, the market size, and, some of the competitive landscape. And, obviously those are three important factors, but I did think, the storytelling was great. And, if that was improved, I think it would be much more compelling.
Yeah.
Jeff?
And I'm kind of the same thing. I thought this was one of the best presentations, well done on the flow, the setting, and everything up that we've seen. So, I mean, again, kudos on the presentation. I think one thing to learn is the importance of having that story also reflect in your financials, and having that revenue model, so that we understand what we're getting into. That is the one piece that was missing, and I kept thinking, okay, maybe I could ask, maybe I could get there in the due diligence phase, but I don't think I had enough to go on to say, okay, yeah, let's dive a little bit deeper on the financials. So with those missing pieces, I think it would have been enough for me to probably pass, even with a phenomenal presentation. So,
Okay.
Yeah, and I would agree as well. And this is one of those things and one of those moments where just leaving information out prevents a company from moving forward, right? The odds are, I would say, again, if you could address this sales cycle issue, I might be very interested in moving it forward, right? I've seen some other ad tech companies move forward in the AI space, right? And so I think if you had those components, your storytelling makes me believe in you and your team. And so why, like, if you nailed all my questions, really, like it'd be really hard for me not to, but because things were missing, it makes it, I'm going to say, easier, even though it doesn't, because I actually like what you're doing. But what I would do, and I would follow up with you, I would want you to, if this was a first time I met you, so most presentations go through a screening component first, then there's going to be another pitch and then a final pitch. I would say, hey, look, please follow up with me, answer these questions, and then let's see what you're up to in a real environment, not in this kind of staged environment.
Yep. Totally agree.
Well, cool. Well, thank you, Tyler, so much for presenting. If you guys are needing help with your pitch deck, please check out the book, the pitch deck book. It will tell you all the things that you need in the deck and tell you why we need them. And then if you are needing help with your finances, please check out Forecaster. They are a great tool. There's a link in our description that will give you a discount as well. And they're going gangbusters. So check them out. They're a great tool. So thanks again, Tyler. And thanks, Gavin, for being here as our guest. And we will see you guys next time.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, guys.